Welcome to Chapter 9, in which we will discuss how an EMS agency creates and maintains a culture of quality. Once completed with this module, you should be able to apply techniques to help create a culture change for quality improvement, assess culture in an organization, identify the components of a high reliability organization, use standardized assessments to determine the attitudes and beliefs in an organization, differentiate between values, beliefs, and attitudes, identify sample reward systems to promote a system of quality, recognize the components of a just culture, and integrate the necessary parts to bring an organization into alignment. To begin this chapter, we have a scenario that is a little long, but not too unfamiliar, at least in spirit, for the experienced EMS provider. Your service covers a resort area and responded to a person down on the sidewalk. Upon arrival, the patient is found sitting on a bus bench. He stated that he has been drinking and does not want any help. The patient signs a release and leaves, presumably to continue his vacation. About an hour later, a different crew responds to the same patient and cancels the private ambulance. An hour after that, there is a third call a mile away for the same patient. The crew assesses the patient and offers to call a transporting ambulance. When the ambulance arrives, it winds up being the crew that saw the patient earlier. They tell the crew that this same patient has been seen several times within the last few hours and has refused transport each time. Despite a small bump to the front of the patient's head, a release is signed and the units clear the scene. Only 45 minutes later, another call is received for the same person about a half-mile away from the previous call. While the patient appears slightly more intoxicated, he still refuses care and transport. The crew is able to talk the patient into allowing them to at least apply a dressing to his head wound, and one of the paramedics wrote, "Do not call 911, just drunk," on it. Only 15 minutes later, the patient winds up triggering yet another 911 call at the next bus stop. The police arrive on the scene first and, after seeing the message, places the patient in the squad car intending to book him for public intoxication. While en route to the jail, however, the patient experiences difficulty breathing and the police officer diverts to the local hospital instead. By the time the officer arrives at the emergency department, the patient is in respiratory arrest. The ED staff found an empty bottle of Lortab on the patient. When combined with alcohol, the Lortab resulted in a multi-drug overdose. Based upon that scenario, what attitudes and beliefs on the part of the agency's personnel had a direct and negative impact on the patient's outcome? Why were various levels of assessment performed on the patient? Was there any bias at play when the crews interacted with the patient? If so, how can EMS personnel overcome those biases? As a quality control officer for this agency, how would you ensure reliability in future patient encounters? Creating a culture of quality can be a difficult and daunting task for any EMS leader or manager. While some organizations are progressive and foster a very positive working environment, that is not always the case, and many EMS organizations actually have a culture of fear where employees are worried about being singled out, hazed by peers, labeled, open for liability, or used as a scapegoat for a bad patient or project outcome. Far too often, EMS managers and peers are quick to place blame and harass other EMS providers. Feedback is also rarely given, and accountability is lacking in all but the most egregious of circumstances. Once such a culture is established or prevalent within an EMS organization, it can be very difficult to change it. Ultimately, creating a culture of quality requires the organization to recognize and admit to the shortcomings of the current culture and then create, instill, and foster values and beliefs that actually reflect quality within all aspects of operations. While such organizational change can be difficult and time-consuming, it is important as quality improvement efforts will suffer if personnel do not value the process and believe their efforts will make a difference. Before one can work on developing a culture of quality within an EMS organization, it is necessary to understand what it means to say quality culture. Every organization, regardless of the quality management tools, processes, and other functional elements it employs, is made up of people. EMS organizations are no exception, as this human factor is what drives an agency's culture. At its heart, EMS is a service-oriented profession that prides itself on providing care to those who need it. In creating a culture of quality, an EMS organization must link this desire for quality patient outcomes and experiences to its personnel. The organization must work to align employees' beliefs, values, and attitudes with the organization's mission and vision statements. Think about organizations and businesses you have visited or worked with. Are there any that strike you as quality organizations? If so, think about what made that experience so positive for you. For many of these organizations, the process of instilling quality begins with hiring the right people and training them on the organization's mission, vision, goals, and values. Does that occur within your EMS agency? Many volunteer organizations are just happy to find people willing to volunteer, and their vetting process is very thin, if it exists at all. Once hired or approved for membership within the agency, those new personnel are typically not formally oriented to the organization. Think about your own experience with your current EMS organization. Were you provided with a formal orientation upon hire? Even now, do you know the mission, vision, values, and goals of your organization? Do they even exist? Hiring the right people and instilling those organizational values is important to develop and foster a positive culture within your EMS agency. Unfortunately, if your EMS agency fails to ensure all employees or members are familiar with the mission, vision, values, and goals of the organization, those employees or members are left to define that for themselves, which can lead to a degenerative process called normalization of deviance, where a lower standard of performance is accepted and becomes the norm. Within a culture of quality, clear standards for behaviors are defined, and they are supported and maintained throughout the organization. Within a healthcare entity, patient care and positive outcomes are the cornerstone of all procedures and processes, and organizational actions are driven by the entity's clearly defined and aligned mission, vision, and goals. Everyone is on the same page, and as a result, the organization moves forward as one because every employee, from the entry-level minimum wage employee to the CEO, believes in the organization's mission and vision. They share values with the organization and want to see the organization achieve its goals. That is the nature of a quality organization. Everyone is fully vested in helping the organization meet its mission, vision, and goals. As far as culture is concerned, a culture is defined as a pattern of shared beliefs and values that provide the members of an organization with rules of behavior or accepted norms for conducting operations. Culture helps remove uncertainty for personnel and provides a context for doing the organization's work. It provides personnel with cues that guide them in performing their functions, and it influences personnel behavior through these cues as to what is and is not appropriate behavior. Culture can consist of artifacts, behaviors, values, beliefs, and underlying assumptions that are developed by a given group of people as they learn to cope with internal and external problems of survival and prosperity. Values are those things we regard as having ultimate importance, significance, or worth. Attitude is a manner, disposition, feeling, or position with regard to a person or thing. The values and attitudes of the people within an organization go a long way in defining that organization's culture. To be proactive, an organization itself takes the first steps in defining its culture of quality by first stating its beliefs through its mission, values, and vision statements. To be effective in supporting a positive culture of quality, these organizational elements must also support what is known as a just culture, where people can report mistakes, errors, or waste without reprisal or personal risk. This does not mean that employees are not held accountable for bad actions, mind you. What it does mean is that the organization functions on the assumption that its employees are good people who try to do the right things for the right reasons. Even dedicated and trained people can make mistakes, and the organization must ensure it eliminates root systems and process causes for such mistakes before automatically assuming a problem arose solely due to a personnel issue. Along those lines, it is also incumbent upon a quality organization to hold people accountable for their actions, both the good and the bad. If someone does something great, be sure to recognize them for their outstanding contribution to the organization. Far too often, EMS agencies will only recognize people when a mistake is made and fail to recognize all of their positive contributions either before or after that bad event. If an employee intentionally commits a bad act, however, the organization owes it to the rest of its personnel to ensure the individual is held responsible for that bad act as well. Nothing erodes the efforts of good people quite like a failure of an employer to hold substandard employees accountable for their lack of effort or performance, or an intentional bad act or overall poor attitude. One of the great things about culture is that it can be taught and fostered within an organization. Culture is a body of learned behaviors specific to a given entity, and it acts like a template, sharpening behavior and conduct within the agency from generation to generation. People do not have to be born with the knowledge of your EMS agency's culture. Rather, they learn that culture, either good or bad, through their routine, daily operations within the organization. For that reason, it is incumbent upon EMS leaders and managers to ensure they are routinely taking progressive steps to develop and maintain a positive culture within the organization. Again, organizational culture is ultimately influenced and defined by human behavior. Given their position of authority within the organization, managers have a profound impact on organizational culture and must ensure they are modeling the right behavior at all times while ensuring the organization's vision is passed on to future generations of employees. If it is not already clear from the discussion thus far, an organization's culture can either facilitate or inhibit the organization's performance. As a result, the role of leaders and managers within the organization and their impact on shaping and transmitting a positive, desired organizational culture cannot be overstated. When formally working to define an organization and develop a culture of quality within that organization, leadership must begin with defining the organization's mission. While the mission may appear self-evident to organizational leadership, it is dangerous to assume that everyone will view the organization through the same lens at all times. A mission statement grounds the organization and serves as a beacon to everyone as to what the organization is there to do. A mission statement is designed to turn an agency's vision into practice. As a result, any organizational mission statement should be actionable and achievable. Mission statements should not be overblown or impossible to accomplish, lest the value of that statement be eroded by establishing a mission that cannot be achieved. Again, the organization's mission is its foundation upon which all other activities are built. From the mission statement evolves the organization's vision statement. This is the organization's statement of what it believes is possible. It is a picture of the future that the organization wants to create. Within an EMS agency, the vision statement will tell the public what change or changes the organization wishes to create for the future of the community. It should convey the importance of patient care and quality. Beyond the organization itself, a quality improvement committee or team would benefit from its own mission and vision statements. Regardless of whether mission and vision statements are for the organization as a whole or for a team or committee within the organization, the same principles apply. As leaders within the organization further define the EMS agency, developing mission and vision statements is not enough. While the mission and vision statement may indicate where the organization is headed and what personnel will do to get there, it is also important to define how they will do that work. That is where value statements come into play. The only way an agency can achieve a remarkable culture of quality is if the work is done in a way that reflects the organization's universally shared values. Within EMS, those values must reflect the values of the community served by the agency. In this respect, value statements provide the tools for an organization to accomplish its quality improvement initiatives. They look both outside and within the organization to define an organizational context for activities and decision-making. Value statements must allow quality improvement teams and educators to teach those values or demonstrate them by example. Ultimately, values-based dilemmas are faced daily by organizational personnel, and without prior discussion about the organization's values, there is no context available for them to use in making a decision. Organizational value statements provide that context for everyone within the organization. They will start with the organization's mission and vision, and will then talk about how the organization will ensure that work is done to model the behaviors it wants to see in the community. While it is important to have mission, vision, and value statements, those statements are worth very little to the organization if the organization's activities are not aligned to them. Alignment is the state of agreement and cooperation between persons, groups, and internal organizational divisions with a common cause and viewpoint. Alignment occurs when context, strategy, people, structure, processes, and leadership uniformly line up with the vision of the organization. In this respect, any quality improvement program within the organization must also be aligned with the organization's mission, vision, values, and goals. If the organization itself is aligned to the values of the community it serves, then any quality improvement initiatives within the organization should also be aligned to the community's values as well. In ensuring alignment with the community at large, it is important that any quality improvement activities employed by the organization transcend social, cultural, and other barriers to ensure the organization and its culture of quality is connected to the community as a whole. Those affected by the organization's quality improvement program, which means both internal and external stakeholders, customers, and the public, must be aligned with the organization's mission and vision. If such alignment does not exist, it may be necessary for the organization to reevaluate its statements to ensure they address the actual environment in which the agency is functioning. Flexing the structures of an organization, so to speak, may be necessary to ensure alignment with the public served by the organization. Because the core premise of EMS quality improvement programs is that structure and process equals outcome, structural changes or realignment of organizational priorities may be necessary to ensure the best possible outcomes for the agency's patients and other stakeholders. It is important to ensure the right people are in the right positions within the organization, and sometimes a change in leadership is necessary to ensure organizational leadership is aligned with the organization itself and the community it serves. Identifying core purposes and empowering leadership to reinforce values are important in bringing all parts of the organization into cadence with the organization's community-aligned mission. This serves as a basis for monitoring performance and reporting back on changes to help establish the brand of the organization's quality initiative. Branding in the context of a quality improvement program is much more than just creative marketing. It is the representation of what the agency's quality improvement program stands for. It is a promise of quality made to the community by the organization. Developing a brand can be crucial to the success of a program, as it serves as a reminder of why the quality improvement program exists and what it is trying to achieve. A strong, unique brand identity will bring the Quality Improvement Initiative to life by directing attention to the Quality Improvement Initiative's goals. Branding builds distinctive relationships between employees and patients, which also helps reinforce the importance of personnel living the values incumbent within the brand. When personnel understand and accept that the brand's values are genuine, they have a much easier time aligning their attitudes and behaviors with the brand's values. This, in turn, helps support a culture of quality within the organization. This graphic represents a cyclic process of developing an EMS brand. Start by establishing a positive quality culture. Ensure the tools are in place to support the organization's mission, vision, values, and goals. Foster the positive impacts of the brand as related to attitudes, decisions, and behaviors of the organization's staff and employees, and evaluate the results to inform the process of either validating or further modifying the organization's culture through affirmative steps. The process of branding can take some time, but maintaining a consistent message based upon the aligned mission, vision, values, and goals of the organization will help the organization build awareness, garner acceptance, and eventually sustain the commitment of its personnel in maintaining a culture of quality. Through this process, the end goal is to realize greater satisfaction for both patients and personnel, leading to personnel and patient preference and loyalty. High-quality organizations are often seen as or recognized for providing outstanding customer service. Simply stated, such an organization provides a service or product in the way that it has been promised. In many instances, the organization actually exceeds expectations by not only delivering what is promised, but by going over and above for the customer. Within the business world, a failure to provide customer service will typically result in lost sales or other liability issues that can impact the financial stability and bottom line of the company. EMS is a little unique in that our patients typically do not have the ability to shop around for the best value or service when requesting EMS services. As a matter of fact, many of an ambulance services customers are in a very vulnerable state when they call EMS. These facts still do not diminish the need for EMS agencies to seek a culture of both quality and service, however. For many EMS agencies, their customers are taxpayers who can indeed have an impact on their bottom line. Having a very strong and supportive customer base goes a long way in maintaining the strength and integrity of an EMS agency. Ensuring quality and providing outstanding customer service are two proven and effective ways to ensure public support is there when needed. Given the importance of both quality and service, complacency is not acceptable, even if it is, unfortunately, somewhat commonplace. EMS leaders must be mindful of marketing strategies and the need to provide the best service possible on a consistent basis. This begins by ensuring all employees, new hires included, understand the organization's mission, vision, and value statements. Ensure everyone within the organization is familiar with the tools management uses to monitor customer service, share the results of the collected data within the organization, and ensure it is clear to everyone how quality and customer service align with the organization's priorities. Broadly speaking, customer service is any contact, whether active or passive, between a customer and a company, which includes the company's employees, that causes a negative or positive customer perception. These interactions can occur virtually anywhere and are not limited to the patient's time in the back of the ambulance. If an ambulance crew goes to the local grocery store to buy meals for the day and park the ambulance in the fire lane to do so, that can have a negative impression. One of your members wearing a department shirt off-duty can reflect on the organization even if that individual is not on duty at the time. Email, telephone, and other communications can impact customer perceptions. Add the impact of social media and streaming video to the mix, and a bad interaction with a customer can take on a life of its own and spread well beyond the isolated incident or interaction. We are always on the proverbial stage and must be mindful of how we are perceived by the public we serve. Along those lines, it is also important to listen to our customers when they tell us what they want. This can be in the form of surveys, unsolicited communications, or even comments made during patient care. There is also nothing wrong with performing a critical self-analysis as well. Ask yourself what level of care and customer service you would expect or like to see if you called an EMS agency for assistance. If you are not delivering care you would find acceptable for yourself or a family member, that is a pretty strong indication that some changes need to be made to integrate quality into the organization. In addition to garnering support from the public you serve while providing the best care possible, keep in mind that the level of quality provided by an EMS agency is reflective of the organization's leadership. As a current or future leader within the EMS profession, it is or will be incumbent upon you to model the behaviors you would expect of others within the organization. This means providing outstanding quality customer service to not only the public you serve, but to your employees as well. EMS leaders must demonstrate that they serve not only the public, the entity's customers, but their employed providers. This is part of what is known as servant leadership. The servant leader is a servant first, which begins with a sincere desire to help and serve others. Such a leader recognizes that the agency's employees are not there to serve him or her. Rather, the leader is there to serve his or her employees. This is based upon the concept of agapio, which refers to doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. It means loving others in a social or moral sense by embracing the judgment and deliberate dissent of the will as a matter of principle, duty, and propriety. The servant leader considers each subordinate as a total person with needs, wants, and desires. He or she focuses on the member first, the talents of the member second, and the benefit to the organization third. One very pronounced and noteworthy advocate for this type of servant leadership is Sir Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Group, which controls more than 400 companies worldwide. With an estimated net worth of $5.2 billion US, according to Forbes in July of 2015, Branson has been quoted as saying, "Clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients." He also said the way you treat your employees is the way they will treat your customers. There's no magic formula for great company culture. The key is just to treat your staff how you would like to be treated. Train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to. Learn to look after your staff first, and the rest will follow. And with the right people, anything is possible. All of these statements are reflective of servant leadership. Unfortunately, it is probably likely that you can think of more than a handful of EMS managers or leaders who are anything but servant leaders, which winds up being a significant barrier to developing and maintaining a culture of quality and service. As already mentioned, adverse events must be thoroughly and appropriately evaluated to prevent future similar occurrences. If there truly is a personnel issue that needs to be addressed, management can take either administrative or disciplinary actions. In light of just culture and servant leadership principles, however, it is important to recognize that any such action must be prudent and fair. The prudent part means ensuring the root cause was indeed personnel related. Deming has estimated that 95% of all such negative events are actually related to a systems or process issue, not a personnel problem. Yet, EMS has a history of routinely blaming providers for errors, and even somewhat routine or innocuous corrective action such as provider coaching, counseling, or retraining is perceived by the rank and file as punitive. This brings the discussion back to the subject of just culture. Healthcare in general, but EMS specifically, is a complicated profession in which various diagnostics, protocols, treatments, injuries, and illnesses converge and invariably expose the patient to potential complications resulting from an imperfect system. Unfortunately, within such a system, people are susceptible to making errors. Robust systems that operate in high-risk industries like EMS and healthcare expect or predict human variability in critical circumstances and try to minimize potential issues by building in redundancies and protections within the system itself. In addressing the personnel issue inherent in such a system, organizations must have a transparent and equitable disciplinary process that takes into account personal responsibility and accountability in light of these factors. A just culture is a values-supportive model of shared accountability. It is a culture that holds the organization itself accountable for a system it designs while also ensuring staff are treated fairly, equitably, and justly based upon their behaviors. This shared accountability also requires employees to be accountable for the quality of their choices and for reporting both their errors as well as system vulnerabilities. The assumption is that personnel understand they have a duty to act, to follow procedural rules, and to avoid causing unjustified risk. There is also an assumption that personnel try to do the right things for the right reasons. While many EMS agencies are just now starting to talk about a just culture, it is important that their actions are consistent with their words, as inconsistent application of just culture policies are quickly recognized by employees, which then undermines the entire just culture initiative. As a result, it is important to ensure the EMS agency has a transparent and systematic approach to responding to certain behaviors that it follows every time. Within such a systematic evaluation of human factors, a just culture recognizes three types of human behaviors that are responsible for a lack of quality: human error, at-risk behavior, and reckless behavior. Human error occurs through an inadvertent act where the person does something other than what should have been done without any specific intent to make a mistake. Human error rarely exists in a vacuum, and such error is commonly precipitated by flaws in the current system or process. Within a just culture environment, such errors call for the employer to console the employee and manage the situation through changes in choices, processes, procedures, training, design, or the environment. A step up from human error is at-risk behavior. Such at-risk behavior is a choice made by the employee that increases risk when the risk is not recognized or is mistakenly accepted as justified. Normalization of deviance, as we discussed earlier, is an example of at-risk behavior. Another easy example is a provider who fails to wear his or her seatbelt in the ambulance. These individuals require coaching, and such behavior is best managed by removing incentives for at-risk behavior, creating incentives for healthy behavior, and increasing situational awareness on the part of the employee. If there are barriers to following the rules, then the organization must work diligently to remove them. If organizational norms played a factor, then the organization must address them proactively. While some may think that at-risk behavior should be punished, it is not recommended, as such punishment encourages others to not report such behavior, resulting in error reporting only when those errors cannot be hidden. If an employee exhibits a pattern of at-risk behavior, despite management attempts to correct it, then that behavior becomes reckless. A just culture environment recognizes reckless behavior as a conscious choosing to disregard rules or procedures, resulting in a substantial or unjustifiable risk. Given such intentional conduct, discipline is indeed warranted through either remedial or punitive action, depending on the nature and severity of the occurrence. As always, the employer must ensure any such discipline is consistent with past practice and evenly applied. Keep in mind that for every employee who engages in reckless behavior, you have numerous others who work hard to do the right things for the right reasons, and you owe to them to make sure the bad actor is held accountable for his or her bad behavior as it reflects poorly upon the organization, including the other quality employees within the EMS agency, and it is not fair to those who consistently do what they are supposed to do and model quality behavior at all times. Remember, expecting perfection in patient care through a just culture has a price that requires effort and consistency. It starts with understanding the value, setting expectations to align to those values, and designing robust systems to enable personnel involved in quality initiatives to make the right choice. Just culture is about good design of processes as well as the people within the culture. When evaluating quality within an EMS organization, there are some common practices that are indicative of a culture issue within the organization. To truly be a quality organization, it is necessary to recognize these common culture errors and correct them. The first error, search satisfying, occurs when an agency or a quality improvement committee or team stops looking for a reason for failure once a single reason has been found. The entity fails to delve deeper into a root cause analysis and determine the underlying why associated with the problem. Another error, cherry picking, occurs when the organization explains things away by focusing on items that indicate acceptable outcomes instead of indicators of error. Essentially, the crew continues to move down the path it is on, even if there is an error by rationalizing, given a positive outcome despite the error. The third common error, attribution error, is one where a crew becomes judgmental and blames the patient for an error, inferring that the patient's own actions were responsible for the condition giving rise to the error. If any of these culture errors are present within your EMS organization, they must be addressed, as they will continue to serve as barriers to becoming a quality, service-based organization. Needless to say, change in general can be difficult for people and organizations. Cultural change is even more difficult, as it can be somewhat intangible to actually quantify an organization's culture, and any desired change must encompass all levels within the organization for any hope of success. Beginning with the proverbial top, leaders and managers within the organization must remove barriers that rob people of their right to pride of workmanship. What constitutes that pride or serves as motivation can be different for each employee. There are some scholars who believe that motivators are commonly identified by age groups. Those nearing retirement may prefer plaques or awards, while those just entering the workforce prefer more information communication routes for coaching and upbeat messages. The nimble EMS manager must learn to accommodate and motivate all workers that he or she supervises, regardless of the employee's age. Recognition of employees for their good work is important, especially if those efforts are related to quality improvement activities. Rather than having to develop a recognition process on their own, organizational leaders are often well served by garnering input from their employees as to what type of recognition process would be welcome and serve as a true motivator. Remember as well that motivation to accept change is also supported by a sense of purpose and urgency, or dissatisfaction with how things are currently. Do not forget to remind your personnel why the change is necessary and how it benefits not only them and the organization, but those that you serve as well. There is a change equation or formula that was developed back in the early 1960s by a gentleman by the name of David Gleicher. Essentially, for change to occur, there must be dissatisfaction with how things are now. There must be a compelling vision of what can be possible with change, and there must be identifiable steps that can be taken to achieve that vision. If you can multiply those three factors and the result is greater than the resistance to change that exists within the organization, change should occur. Remove any one of those factors, however, and the resistance is too great and there will be no change. Keep these factors in mind when approaching organizational culture and quality improvement activities. Your job as a leader within an EMS agency is to help overcome organizational resistance to change when necessary to accomplish improvements for the organization and its stakeholders, which includes the organization's employees and its customers. When an organization has a culture of quality and customer service that is supported by ongoing quality improvement activities that involve everyone within the organization could probably be classified as a highly reliable organization. Such organizations are able to effectively manage uncertainty in time-critical situations given a strong foundation in human culture and interactions. These organizations are firmly rooted in maintaining and demonstrating strong values, beliefs, and behaviors. A highly reliable organization has an ongoing audit system that recognizes anticipated problems as well as unexpected ones. It fosters a reward system that encourages desired behaviors rather than focusing on punishment. Quality is maintained through constant evaluation of performance, capabilities, and goals. There is a perception of risk as well as knowledge of how to mitigate that risk. And the organization has redundant command and control systems that place decisions in the hands of the most experienced person, regardless of rank, while also providing flexibility based upon situational awareness. The end result is a highly reliable organization that has less negative incidents or accidents than its competitors. Ultimately, an organization's culture serves as the foundation for being a highly reliable organization, and problems with an organization's culture must be addressed before the organization can truly be considered a highly reliable organization that focuses on quality and customer service. Looking back at our initial scenario, the failure to complete an assessment and obtain vital signs is evidence of normalization of deviance. Multiple crews accepted a lower standard based upon their previous experiences with intoxicated patients in a high-volume response area. While this lower standard may be passable in many cases, there is a reason that this is not the standard that should be followed, and this particular case is designed to illustrate that. If the crews had performed to the acceptable established standard, this bad outcome may have been avoided. In failing to follow the standard and accepting this lower threshold of customer service based upon the patient's intoxication demonstrates a lack of alignment between the EMS providers on these crews and the organization's mission, vision, and values. Unfortunately, bias in such circumstances is easily created given previous crew experiences with similarly intoxicated patients. In maintaining a high-quality organization that provides outstanding customer service, such bias cannot be allowed to take hold or impact behaviors. Such bias can be overcome organizationally by education, ensuring new employees receive a proper orientation to the organization, reinforcing positive behaviors, and maintaining a just culture. The reliability associated with any organization is tied directly to the organization's culture, which, for an EMS agency, begins with an organizational mission dedicated to customer service and providing the highest level of quality patient care. EMS agencies must build cultures of service and ensure alignment of its mission, vision, values, and goals with policies and procedures, along with the attitudes, beliefs, and values of its personnel. When aligned properly, everyone within the organization should demonstrate behavior that reflects the organization's mission of quality by consistently following procedures and doing the right things for the right reasons. It has been said that a person's character can best be judged by what the person does when he or she believes no one is looking. Your organization wants people of integrity aligned to the organization's mission, vision, values, and goals who consistently do the right thing for the right reasons, even when they believe no one is watching. To summarize this chapter, quality improvement activities must be linked to and rooted in the EMS agency's mission, vision, values, and goals. This alignment is essential, especially if the organization's mission, vision, values, and goals are properly written to address the customer service aspect of providing EMS within its community. Customer service principles are strongly related to quality and must be enveloped within the organization's routine activities and the behaviors of its leaders and employees. We saw how a just culture is related to fostering a highly reliable organization and that change can be difficult, which means EMS leaders and managers must focus on employee behavior and motivation while also maintaining a positive culture more focused on rewarding good behavior as opposed to punishing bad.